Hey there, I'm Eric. I'm one of the co-leaders of Freshline, and I wanted to make this video because I need to explain what we are. It's not super obvious to most people coming in because what we are as a club is pretty unique. There's no other organization in the world that I'm aware of, at least, that does things the way that we do them. And you need to know what you're getting yourself into because this might be far beyond what you thought or what you expected, or it might be right in line with what you're looking for. So rather than put together a I don't know, any kind of salesy video, really what I want to do is I just want to share with you a couple stories that will give you a better understanding and indication of what this club is, and then you can make an informed decision on your side as to whether this is something that aligns with where you want to go from here. So the first thing I want to look at is starting with a story that happened in Colombia. I probably should have had this up for you ready to go beforehand. Let's see if I can quickly find it here. Here we go. So this Colombia expedition, this happened, for me at least, it happened a couple of years ago. But I would say it's a good indication of what can often happen and or often does happen on expeditions. And it really kind of encompasses it in a nutshell. And I'll give you a few additional examples once I'm done this initial story. But we were on an expedition team together in Colombia, and this was day 2 of starting to get into the more remote mountainous regions of Colombia. We had a support truck with us, but that support truck, it had to get turned around because we hit a point where we thought Google Maps had told us there was a road here you could get through. We hit a point where there's a suspension bridge over a canyon that was probably 100 feet high. And that suspension bridge was literally it was a walking bridge. It was the width for a motorcycle to get through and definitely not a support truck. And so we were forced to make the call with the support truck to say, hey, let's look at what other route you can go and where we can meet up again. We figured out that if we go through the mountains, it would be at about a 4-hour jaunt for us and the motorcycles to get through this mountain range, and the support truck would be able to take a highway that would drive a ways, probably another 8 hours for them, but they'd be able to meet us up that evening on the other side. And so we split ways. Support truck took off. They took a good chunk of our overnight gear, food, stuff like that with them. And we took enough water to last the rest of the day. This was still relatively early in the morning, or I should say mid-morning. And we prepared ourselves for the 4-hour journey across the mountains. What ended up transpiring was more than 4 hours. Let me see if I can find this in my personal videos here. So as we got deeper and deeper into the Colombian jungle, it got muddier and muddier. It had been on the tail end of the rainy season, and this wasn't just all uphill. This was a mountain range where we were going up and down and up and down. So going back was not necessarily any easier than going forward. And the further we got in, the worse the mud got. And so 4 hours, we pretty quickly realized was not going to be viable. It turned into 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours. Around 7 hours, we ran out of water. 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours. This video is taken right in around the kind of the 9.5 hour mark. And we were only halfway through. We weren't even close to what we thought would be our rendezvous destination. So what became pretty clear, it's hard to tell in this video, but this is kind of right before dusk. Became pretty clear we're going to spend a night in the jungle. What also was on our minds was the fact that there was no village in between. There's nothing on the map. There's no indication that there's any people or settlement or place to get water, food, etc. And we had hauled these bikes for hours and hours. You can see we got tow ropes here. We're as teams, each bike, we got 10 bikes hauling through the mud, one stretch at a time. We can kind of see too here is we got a guy that we're talking to. We asked him, is there anything around? And he, at that moment, was our savior because he let us know that there was actually a small settlement about 1 kilometer from where we were. And so we decided we're going to try and make it to that little settlement. And we continued pushing. Actually, this probably is not the best indication. Let me go back to this here. So from here, let's see. Actually, it's probably this is better. This was the first place that we came to where there was anybody that actually had a little farm homestead area, and we asked them, hey, is this it? Is this the settlement? And they said, yeah, it's like, this is it. There's really only a small collection of houses there in this settlement village, whatever you want to call it, where these people, they were sustenance farmers. There was no guest house, Airbnb, hotel, anything. I mean, just to say that sounds ridiculous. Like, this is deep in the mountains of Colombia. And we did ask the lady there, like, is there any place that we can stay here? And she was like, well, there's definitely no guest house, but if you guys want, you can camp outside of my house. And so we pulled all the bikes in there, and we just set up there to sleep kind of in front of her house on their porch. We didn't ask for this, but she proceeded to organize with the local villages there to pull food from different houses, different villages. We saw her kids kind of running in and out the door getting food from different people, and she proceeded to cook us a dinner for all 10 of us on her little 4-burner wood stove that she had out there. She cooked us a pretty good meal, actually, and she served us there on her porch. And as we were eating dinner, some of the locals started showing up just to come see us, talk to us. And what we learned is that we were the first Westerners to ever ride through there. We were, for a number of those individuals that were living out there, we were some of the first white people that they'd ever seen, which was a really cool experience because it allowed us to learn a lot more about their culture, about how they lived their day-to-day, what their philosophies were like. And it also allowed them to learn more about us, about ourselves. And you start to understand pretty quickly that your view, your experience of the world is one small piece of the world. There's so many other ways to live. There's so many other ways to think. There's so many other philosophies that are out there. And it really kind of expands your understanding of yourself, of your family dynamics, of the way that you think about work, all of those things, which we believe as a club is a really healthy thing. And that's what we're constantly trying to do. We're constantly trying to expand our horizons, challenge ourselves, and look for opportunities to learn and grow. And we're doing that on expeditions, and we're doing that at home as well, which I'll touch on in a second. So, conclusion of the story essentially was, next morning we wake up. This is actually the picture that I took the next morning. This is it. This is the village that you're looking at. Beautiful little spot in the middle of Colombia. Also found out that this was kind of within the realm of cartel territory. And that villagers told us some pretty nasty tales of cartels running through there and exerting their influence, let's say, in that region. And also just learning the reality of what it means to live in that kind of situation, where that's not something typically that I'm dealing with, at least here at home in North America, or in Canada, where I'm sitting right now, and giving you perspective on that. That next morning, that same lady, she cooked us breakfast, and we handsomely tipped her. Let's say that we left her with what would be probably the equivalent of a month's wages. That's typically what we try and do as a club. Also helped her with the dishes the night before and that morning. Like, we really want to make sure that we're there to leave the place better than we found it. That's something that is important to us within the club. And we continued on. It took us another full day to actually get to the rendezvous point. And then from there, we continued to explore the country of Colombia. This was same thing in the village where we'd camped out that night. So continued to explore Colombia. From there, we went into the emerald mines in Colombia. Again, not a tourist destination, not some place that any tourist in their right mind would go into. These are the emerald pits, where we found out 95% of the world's emeralds come from this location and this way of kind of mining emeralds here in this region. These are individuals that spend their lives mining the pits. They're in there, they work in teams of 4 or 5, and among those small teams, they're lucky if they find an emerald once a month, and they'll go and they'll sell that to an emerald buyer and hopefully make enough money to make it through that month from the emerald that was sold. Again, totally different dynamic, very different people, different scenario, different circumstance than the village that we were in, but learning how these guys live lives. And same thing here in terms of our philosophy of leave a place better than you found it. In this scenario, doing the little that we could, we brought in as many bags of food and water and cigarettes into these people and kind of distributed them around, and attempted to learn. Also got in there as well and spent a full day kind of digging with them, working through. Now that's one day. These guys spend their entire lives there, so it's a small understanding of what it's like to live there. But it's nonetheless, it's saying, what can we learn from these people in this region? What can we learn? And in that process, also just coming in with a level of humility is really important too, and not coming in with any level of arrogance, and wanting to truly understand how these people live, and also different ways that we can help out. So I'm telling you this because Colombia kind of encompasses a lot of what can happen in Freshline on a Freshline expedition. Freshline expeditions often do not go according to plan. I'd say that's the norm. The norm is that you set a plan, things change. And the reason for that is because no one from that expedition team has ever been there. The leaders that we have for our expeditions, they're volunteer leaders. The teams that are there, none of them have been to the region. All of this is planned from a computer somewhere else. Now we try and do our due diligence. We generally are spending about a year ahead of time planning these expeditions. We're coming up with quite a few contingency plans. We have our emergency procedures if someone gets injured, if there's some kind of breakdown, these things happen regularly enough that we know we need to have strong plans for that and procedures for that. And we do, and we've got support networks. On top of that, though, we need to make sure that the expedition teams, the guys on the teams, that they know what to do. And so if you're interested in getting involved with Freshline and having that kind of experience like we've had in Colombia, or maybe just quickly, I'll show you like a few more recent things here. This is an expedition in Mongolia. This is another scenario. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but this is another scenario where we got rescued by again, nomadic yak herders in the mountains of Mongolia. You can kind of see my breath here. Like we were dipping below zero, and we had done, I think, 7 river crossings. And then we had 2 motorcycles break down. And we just got lucky that these people were only a few hundred meters from where we broke down. And they took us in for the night, where we otherwise, we had all our camping gear and everything with us, but it gave us an opportunity to actually fix our motorcycles in some relative warmth, warm up as well, because we were freezing our butts off. And they housed us, fed us, and again, we got a chance to learn quite a bit about their culture. And that's something that does happen pretty regularly on these expeditions when you're running together as a team. I diverted a little bit there. So the question is, like, how do you know that you're going to be on a team with guys that you can trust? The way that we address that is we've got a Freshline boot camp. So before you get into expedition teams, we will have you fill out an application. If that application seems like it's valid, then you have the opportunity to move forward into booking a boot camp. So what is boot camp? What does that look like? What does it prepare you for? Let me see if there's a few photos in here. I'm kind of just hanging out on our Instagram, but boot camp takes place in Namibia, which is in Southern Africa. The reason it takes place in Namibia is because we wanted an environment where we are genuinely replicating expedition environments. We can't run a boot camp here in North America because you speak the language. Well, I mean, it depends on where you're coming from. We have a lot of guys from different countries all over the world, but North America to us is at the very least, it's too Western. If you don't speak the language, which is English, which most guys do have a grasp of English coming into the club, you're also you're more or less familiar with the terrain, with the wildlife. You kind of know how to handle a scenario. Biggest thing is you're familiar with the culture around you. If you run a boot camp here in North America, it's not a big deal to go to the store and go pick something up. When you're running a boot camp in the middle of Africa, that boot camp that we run in Africa is an expedition boot camp. It replicates an expedition scenario. You're not just doing circles or laps on a farm there in Namibia. You are going to be transversing around the country. You're going to be meeting different people, different tribes, different villages, different locations. I'm just seeing if there's anything. You're going to be stuck in the sand. out there. And then maybe this is a photo from boot camp. Also from boot camp, you're going to encounter wildlife. Like, I don't know if this is a video or a picture, just a picture. But we have elephants running through camp all the time in boot camp. How do you deal with that? Well, the reason that we're sending you to boot camp is because we're letting you know that there are policies, procedures, ways of doing things that can often apply globally, but you have to know how to deal with the unexpected, because we deal with the unexpected all the time. And that's everything from understanding how we as a club will run a morning brief. What are we doing as our pre-checks? What are we communicating as a team? What happens in the event of any emergency? What happens within specific points of an emergency? What roles are you playing on a team? So on an expedition team, we've got 7 different roles. You might end up on an expedition team as a navigator, as a mechanic, as a medic, as a videographer, as an assistant leader. Like there's a number of different positions to draw from. You're learning a lot of those skills at boot camp and understanding what's the dynamic that I'm going to be playing within these teams. When you run an expedition with Freshline, you're not just following a tail light around a country, you're running it as a valued member of a team. You're going to be someone that the rest of the guys look at when it comes to specific questions, responsibilities, etc. It's not going to all just fall on the expedition leader or the assistant leader. You're there as a participating member because the expeditions that we run, they require that. This is not a scenario where you're doing a tour around the country. If you're going and exploring these remote locations together, it requires a team of guys who are all doing their own, pulling their own weight, doing their own part to make sure that team unilaterally successfully not only gets through that expedition, but on our expeditions, each expedition comes with a mission as well. There's always there's always a mission on every expedition. A lot of times that's humanitarian. A lot of times we're delivering medical supplies, or we're delivering water filtration, or we're delivering school supplies, or sometimes the mission is a mission of true exploration. We're going and we're looking for what we hear is a lost temple in the region, or a tribe that we're trying to get to that is one that hasn't been either contacted before, maybe not contacted before, but does not get much contact, let's say that, and going and learning from those people. So there's various missions that we try to accomplish, and we need a team to do that. It can't just be a leader dragging a bunch of guys through. And so boot camp is what teaches a lot of those skills. Boot camp also, in a big way, focuses on giving you an opportunity to practice leadership skills, leading these teams, and understanding what your strengths are as a leader, what your weaknesses are. Boot camp will give you, we as a club will give you a peer review. You're reviewed by your instructors. You're reviewed by your peers individually, and you'll be given your strengths, your weaknesses, what you can improve on, where you can lean into, and then you're also going to be given a whole host of skills related to expeditions. Some of them are writing skills. You get a little bit of that. But writing skills is by no means the focus of boot camp. If you're thinking, I'm just going to go to Africa and that's where they're going to teach me how to ride motorcycles, that's a very, very small component of boot camp. Maybe 10% of boot camp is focused on writing skill. The rest is focused on expedition team skills. The other piece that happens at boot camp is where you learn the Freshline culture. And the reason that that's so important is because Freshline, most guys don't understand that Freshline, first and foremost, is actually a men's club where we're here to support each other in our growth. In order to support each other, we need to earn each other's trust, and we need to understand each other. And for that to happen, we need to learn about what's really going on. And so what starts at boot camp is you start getting into what we call campfire chats, and that's where we start exploring with some deep questions. What's going on in your life? What are your challenges? What are your insecurities? What are your dreams? What are your hopes? What's holding you back? What's moving you forward? Where can we support you? And you get to know that about the guys around you, and then that's continued once you move into expeditions. So that's kind of where the whole journey starts with Freshline. It's if you decide that this is something that you want to move forward with, it starts at boot camp, and that gives you an opportunity to understand our culture. And it also gives us an opportunity to discover are you the kind of guy that we want to ride with? There are definitely guys that don't make it through boot camp. They're typically it's an attitude thing. We just don't. We have a hard policy. We don't take guys that are not team players. That we don't take guys that are whiners. We don't take guys that are not there to contribute. We don't take guys that have big egos, and we filter all that out. We filter that out at boot camp so that when you get onto an expedition, even if there's guys on the expedition team you don't know, you know that they've been vetted, you know that you can rely on them, you know that you can literally trust them with your life, because oftentimes you have to. So that's what boot camp's all about. Now the fallout from that is the fact that we have, let's see if I can show you here, we have a back-end member portal, because expeditions, most guys are only going on expeditions 2 weeks out of the year. So an expedition a year. The rest of the time, there's another 50 weeks where we're going through life together. And a lot of that happens here within the back-end member portal. We've got a general chat where there's just kind of ongoing conversations all the time. Guys are posting things. But in here, maybe a bigger piece is just, I would say Freshline attracts men that have strong values. Guys who want to be better. And when I say better, that means they are constantly asking themselves, how do I show up in a way that's going to be more impactful for my partner, for my kids, for my business, for the teams within my business, for my employees, for my community, for volunteer positions I hold, all of that. And there's a lot of responsibility that comes if you really step into the responsibility of being a man. There's a lot of weight on your shoulders. And so our philosophy is to carry that weight together. And we have this space here where we can come in here, and I'm not going to share anything personal when it comes to goals, commitments, etc. That's private information until you get in the club. But we hold a certain level of accountability to each other. Some of that's challenging each other. Some of that's supporting each other, kind of attaining dreams, which happens quite a bit. That actually, maybe a good section I can show you is member value offers. A lot of times members come in here and they'll just say, here's what I have to offer other members. A lot of times that's just a place to stay, couch to crash on. These are all over the world. We've got over 300 members kind of around the world right now, where you can go and travel and have a couch to crash on. Sometimes it's skills as well. So if you've got a specific skill that you're decent at, that's something that you can throw in here, and you'll see that as part of the member offers. And it's in an effort to support each other getting to where we want to go collectively, but also individually. And then part of this as well is meetups. So let me go back to events here. So we meet up online right now once every 2 weeks. I think pretty soon here we're going to meet up once a week. We also, and in those meetups, we're kind of going through club information, and then we also break into breakout rooms and do smaller groups of guys, around 5 guys each, where we're chatting about life and what's going on and what's happened since last call, and learning from each other, growing from each other. Continue to do campfire chats and these digital calls where we'll kind of dig deep and see what we're facing, and support each other through that. And then we also have in-person meetups. So here's an example of that. Calgary member meetup. We meet once a month for a breakfast. It's not always a breakfast. Sometimes it's a pub night. Sometimes it's a ride, whatever. You've also got, it's winter right now where I'm just outside of Calgary in a small town called Cochrane on the edge of the Rockies here. So there's not a ton of local rides in my area. But we do have things like the member muster. So where members from all over the world come get together, and in the member muster, that's where you can meet all the members from Freshline. This one's happening in Colorado this year. So we do those kind of events as well. Ultimately, goal of the club is to challenge each other for growth. It's a men's club. It's only men. We do have a women's chapter, and we very much encourage women to go and join that chapter. At the muster is the one place that will mix kind of the men and women, and they'll come together from the two different factions of Freshline. The women's side is called We Roam. Guys is called Freshline. Other than that, though, everything else is men's focused. The expeditions is all men, boot camp's all men, and the back end's all men. And the reason for that is because it's not because we don't think the women can do the rides we're doing, or that we want to ostracize them. In fact, I'd say in most cases you'll find the conversations here really we honor the women that are in our lives. But we're hearing these conversations because there's some burdens that men shoulder, where it's easier to open up to other guys that really understand that without the feminine presence in the room. So, and that's both on expeditions as well as within the digital calls. So if this all sounds like something that you're interested in, if this sounds like the kind of club that you want to join, which allows you to go on these crazy adventures around the world to destinations that most people can't imagine having gone to otherwise on their own, and then at the same time you're kind of building yourself as a man of caliber within a bunch of men who share similar values in that way, then get in touch. There's probably there's going to be a link either below this, or maybe there's an application below this that you can go fill out. Or if you're looking at this on YouTube or somewhere else, then I'm sure there's going to be a link in the description. So go from there, get in touch with us, and we'll move on to the next steps and go through your application, do a little bit of an assessment back and forth with you, see if it seems like it's something that's worth taking next steps on. And if it is, then we can kind of go from there. All right, I might see you on the other side.